Sean, you mentioned tit for tat earlier, and this makes me, come at this from two angles. One is tit for tat means it just goes on and on, potentially escalates. The second is where it starts, and if you ask Israel where it started, they say, well, actually, it started years ago. If you ask Iran where it started when they bombed the consulate. If you ask a Palestinian where it started with them, they'll say, well, it didn't start on the 7th of October. So it's a kind of a game, who's got the best analysis. Ultimately, though, what do you fear most about what's happening now with the overall Israel conflict, now including Iran directly?
Yeah, it's a big subject, isn't it? I think the current iteration, Iran was very clear with its diplomatic language. It said that the attack on its consulate on the 1st of April, they claimed it was illegal under international law. They claimed that that couldn't go unanswered. And interestingly enough, Israel has targeted, I think, 18 different Iranian military figures in Syria over the last few months and years without any direct reprisal. I think this particular one, because it was a consulate, because of its special nature, that became something that Iran could not turn the other cheek and felt duty bound. What worries me is that the level of response, because I can only imagine if I was here in the UK and I understood that Russia had launched a reprisal attack for something we'd done elsewhere in the world, and that reprisal attack was 331 missiles coming our way, the biggest ever launch of rockets and missiles outside the Ukraine-Russia war, I might think that's rather provocative. And that worries me because you can very quickly see this escalate into a regional war. Now, I say that, my gut says that none of the parties, apart from potentially Israel, want to see that happen. Iran was very clear afterwards. They said, we're drawing a line under it. We've done our reprisal. The proof of the pudding is that most of these there were no casualties on the ground for Israel, apart from one 7-year-old girl. So although there were a lot of missiles, they were taken out, and Iran said, that's it. The trouble is, as you say, is that going to be enough for Netanyahu and his hardline critics who say, if you let Iran get away with this, we've been weakened in the region. We've got to demonstrate our strength. Where does that stop?
Well, if you follow that, it doesn't stop. History shows that it does. Either peters out or somebody decides they've lost. But it's just, I was just thinking, you were speaking, Sean, these things do seem to follow the same pattern. So we've spoken about 9/11. Now, up to 3,000 people perished in one go. The Twin Towers come down. It was pretty horrendous. I remember watching it live on the TV. But the response to that was massive. Somebody could say disproportionate. But it was anger, wipe them out response. It happened between Israel and Gaza. Now, the attacks by Hamas were pretty horrendous, as you said last week. And if you want to draw equivalence with numbers, what's happened afterwards is massive. You could use the word disproportionate. Same thing with Iran. So maybe, and it's always one person, Netanyahu in Israel, and now it's the Ayatollah in Iran. It's always one person that says, go for them, boys. Big. So maybe that's just the way it is with these hyper characters.
Yeah, one of the things I think I'm acutely aware that we're not good at in the West. We look at these things through a Western lens rather than through a Middle Eastern lens. And you go, what do you mean, Sean? I was chatting to a colleague this week after the event about this proportionality. And he cited an example when he was in Iraq and with the military, and they killed a civilian by accident in a road. Without going into the detail, it was an accident. And there were mobs around that were baying for Western blood. One of their interpreters just said, look, you need to provide blood money. That's how it works over here. How much? $5,000. They found $5,000. Everybody went away happy. They accept it was, and you go, how does that equate through our lens? I only use it as an example because we don't necessarily feel or operate or think the same way. And the danger of looking for equivalence is I find it very difficult to see 331 drones and missiles as anything other than a hugely disproportionate effort. But look at it from another metric, 1 casualty versus 13 people killed, which is what happened to Iranians as a result of the consulate going. Then all of a sudden you go, yes, through a different lens, did Iran know that with American support and that's one of the reasons why, what does good look like? Iran immediately claimed this was a success. To their domestic audience, they claimed they'd blown up, destroyed, leveled the Nevatim airbase, the base from which the F-35s had been launched for the 1st of October. So they can look good in front of their domestic audience.
No, they control their media anyway.
No, exactly.
So, yeah,
whereas,
fine.
we don't know, but Israelis have turned around and shown pictures of Nevatim with a few big holes in the ground with bulldozers bulldozing them
And
over.
that might be untrue as well.
Correct. We don't know.
No.
But I do know from a military perspective that base is huge and it would be very difficult to take that out.
See, I've heard some other commentators say that the reason Iran went heavy was that Iran's stated aim is to eradicate Israel. The attack on the consulate gave them internationally credible evidence why a response was justified, and therefore, let's go for it. We've always wanted to do this. This is our opportunity.
I don't know. We're into the land of conjecture now. What's been fascinating, though, is that the mood music from the Ayatollah and from America has been, we don't want a war. And the prevailing view is that Iran does not want to give license to Israel and or America to come after their fledgling nuclear program. Because if they do that, from a strategic perspective, that is undoubtedly what Iran wants. Iran, not if, when Iran gets nuclear weapons, God forbid, well, they will have the ultimate deterrence against Israel attacking them or America attacking them. And they know that if they provide them an excuse to go after an act of reprisal, the most obvious place to go is to target the nuclear weapons. So logically, the Ayatollah would know that, and therefore he would not want to start all-out war, which is what the language was. The one thing I can't quite get my head around is the 331, but the very fact that the Ayatollah would have known that America would have swept behind Israel. And this goes back to, remember Lord Cameron? He popped up again this week saying to...
He got a lot of stick as well.
Yeah, but he's saying to Netanyahu, you had a double win here. Take it. Don't have another reprisal. And you went, what do you mean a double win? And he said, well, one of which is that your sworn enemy threw everything at you and it didn't get through. Once you've done that, you don't have a second bite of the cherry. So it's proven not to be that, not that effective as well. And secondly, there was a lot of friction between the US and Israel around your approach to Gaza. The US has swung in completely behind you and the UK and others to help you repel this attack. That's repaired the relationship that you had destroyed with the attack on Gaza. So actually, strategically, you've come out of this positively.
Sounds like you think that's common sense language.
Well, I'm trying to find a way of navigating through, is this on the brink of World War III in the Middle East? And I may well be wrong, but it doesn't feel like any of the players want it to be. And therefore, I think that's why this diplomatic effort is going on, to try to pluck these arguments out, try and persuade Netanyahu what to do, and what his options are. But again, it is scary where it might go, but the mood music is that doesn't appear to be what any of the international leaders want.